Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I can see that it's very challenging to attend the panel after lunchtime. Me and my panelists today, we're going to go through an interesting topic related to 5G, the security around that, the challenges related to the rollouts of the 5G, and as well as the impact that has on the IoT today, and how that can become a reality with 5G in the future. And also, we're going to end up the discussion by having an overview about the frauds and what are the top threats today, and how is that impacting still the telcos financially, and what do you see as the trend for the future. So before we start the discussion, and I would like to give like a minute or two to the panelists to introduce themselves. So we can start from my right by Mr. Sarkar from Tata.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Manas Sarkar. I head Managed Security Services for Tata Communication, based out of Dubai. I have been in this industry almost 20 years. Out of that, I practiced managed security services, cybersecurity, almost 15 years. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mehmet Toros. I'm heading to Türk Telekom International, based in Hungary and Istanbul, which is the international arm of parent company of Türk Telekom.
I think it's working, or it should be. Good afternoon. My name is Anne Morel. I'm Senior VP for Global Sale in the international carrier side of Orange, the group Orange. So in this role, we effectively provide services to carriers within the large community, meaning ISPs, MNO, or more traditional carriers, and we obviously provide services to the Orange group as a base for our business.
Good afternoon. My name is Cengiz, CEO of Gulf Bridge International, aka GBI. Pretty new on the role, about 4 months to this date. It's a pleasure to be on the same stage with these lovely, esteemed colleagues, especially with a security expert on a security panel. I don't think none of us are claiming ourselves as security experts, but it's at least good to have one expert. We'll be happy to have your engagement and questions, and really look forward to the discussion.
Hi, I'm Andrew from Equinix. Same as Cengiz, pleasure to be here. Senior Director for Equinix Asia Pacific for service provider verticals and interconnection services.
Right, thank you, gentlemen and ladies. So just before we start the discussion, we're going to have like 10 minutes at the end for a Q&A, and also you have the platform to insert your questions, and we try to take the maximum of the question we can from the monitor as well. So I don't want to have the discussion around only security, since we have only one security expert on the panel, so try to keep the discussion around the business as well. So the first question I would like to ask the panel, and feel free to pick up the question, is why 5G is so important today, and how do you see the impact on our economy? I mean, especially here in the Middle East, so we're here in the Middle East, how do you see the 5G impacting the economy, and why is that important?
Well, I think 5G is already happening. If you look at what's happening in North Korea, the three mobile operators there have already launched 5G. They launched 5G actually ahead of schedule. They were supposed to launch, I think their license meant that they had to launch on the 1st of March. They all launched a month in advance. So it is effectively happening. This market is very much ahead of what we see in the rest of the world, but it's definitely happening. And as an industry, we are definitely all preparing for it. It's going to change dramatically the size of the business, the number of devices that are connected, the speed at which we carry information. And it's also going to change, and I'm not, I think I'll rely on the expert, but by definition, it's a much more distributed network than what we had before. So where you had, in some ways, in 4G, you had kind of a core which you could protect. Now we're in an environment where you effectively have a super distributed network and plenty more information to hack. So it's happening, and it's already happening in some countries, and we have to be ready for it. And the challenges are going to be quite large. I was told that we shouldn't say that as an industry if there's an analyst in the room, so it would panic them, but I'm sure we will tackle them, but it's definitely creating challenges and huge opportunity, of course.
Thanks. And anybody who wants to add?
Yeah, I mean, as a follow-on to Anne's comments, right? I mean, if we're coming from Doha, right? If you drive around in Doha, there are these mega billboards. Everybody's claiming to be the first operator to implement 5G on their network. So it is coming down to the consumer level at some pace, right? So that's happening. Selfishly speaking, as a wholesale carrier, this is good news for us. We all say the same, that it's going to push data consumption. It's going to really create more business for us, and we're going to be the ones that will benefit from the 5G, probably the most. On the other hand, I somewhat feel sorry for mobile operators, right? They are yet to recover their investments into 4G, and now they're being pushed by this industry to go on to 5G and make further investments. So it's a bit of an unbalanced game, but again, we're sitting on the upper end of the scale on this 5G development, I think.
Yeah, so I wanted to jump on that. So we're talking about telcos, and of course, I mean, we're seeing the most of the people are going to fit from this going to be the OTTs because of amount of the data, and that's something that the telco people like today. So when rolling out the 5G, I would like to ask you the panel. The question is that what do you foresee are the challenges from the economics, from the logistics, from what are the major challenges today? From the telco perspective, are you able to build a business case today? Are all the business models available?
Actually, thank you, Mustafa. So we, as an operator, telco operator, and the service provider, of course, we have to prepare ourselves for the future bandwidth. Actually, so I have some numbers. So according to the Cisco's analysis and also forecast, by 2022, the total number of the total IP traffic will hit to 4.8 zettabytes, which is 4.8 trillion gigabytes per year. So it is, I cannot imagine how much it is. So having 5G will be the trigger and will spur the usage of the bandwidth over the backbone for connectivity, for local loop, and also accessing to the mobile devices. On the other side, so intercontinental, connectivity and the bandwidth, backbone bandwidth, will be higher and higher. Together with the security, of course, we have to make sure about the secure networks, and we have to make our customers in safe side from the security point of view.
So I guess maybe I'll offer a little bit of a perspective from I think I'm the only one here from a non-telecom network operator background. I think to your question, Mustafa, there are a number of challenges, I think, with 5G rollout. Number one, at the heart of it all is really the consumer. And I think monetization of applications, the technology is going to be great for the consumer, but at the end of the day, there needs to be a monetization process on the front end of all of that. I think on the back end of all of that, from the infrastructure perspective, I think it's also going to be hugely challenging. So remember, IoT is not just ingress and egress of traffic. At the end of the day, you're collecting a lot of data from the customer lifestyle patterns, their choices, what they're going to be doing. All of that needs to reside somewhere. There needs to be an artificial intelligence or machine learning process that processes all of that, makes it into information that is usable and usable so that people can then take that and go back and push services and applications to the customer. So I think there will be a tipping point right in the middle of that, which is going to be critical, which is once you find what those applications are, then time to market and being able to scale in an appropriate pace to cater for all of that is huge.
Just to add on this, not from the security point of view, this is from the utility point of view. See that the way it will change the life and it will help us. Let's say we're talking about connected cars, we're talking about smart cities, we're talking about, let's say, a drone which is capturing pictures, right? Now, when it will be connected in this backbone, and it will be much more easier for the government, for the bodies, and if sometimes in enterprises, those who can monitor that very effectively. People are talking about today that in the smart cities like in Dubai and all, driver's behavior, right? Dubai, being an UAE, they have got 200 nationalities. People are coming over here and they drive differently. But if we have to get control of the situation, that you need that information should pass on. And you have probably 24 megapixel cameras, right? Everybody's handling. Now, this kind of feed should come to the data center for AI, ML from the security point of view. And not only from security point of view, it is important that this will really change our lives. And whenever we're talking about IoTs, devices, connected house and everything, and you need to have that backbone. And it is a push. We understand there will be a challenge. There will be, I don't know how the business case will work, but there will be a push from the society that we need this, and we have to cope up with that. We have to figure it out how we can do that.
So talking about IoT, so this next one. So everybody is talking that 5G is going to make IoT a reality today. So with the increasing number of devices connected and all of that, so how is that going to be possible with 5G? How do you see that happening, the transition between 4G to 5G, and how we're going to move from thousands of devices to millions of devices, and how is that going to impact the network, and most importantly, who's going to pay the bill, and how is that network is going to be built? So this is for the telco people in the panel. So have you had any discussion about this, and as a business panel, as a business plan? And
yeah, no, I think along with the increase of the number of devices, you're also going to have a massive increase of the usages that come along with it. So I think what we're talking about, in 5G is not, is different type of usage, and it goes back to the security issue. Is that the security will have to be adapted to the usage. If you're talking about effectively connected cars and driverless cars, you can't have your network act. Or if you're talking about health, for example, and theft of identity and medical record, you have to have super high level of security. If you're talking about gaming, for example, well, is security an issue? I'm not too sure. Or if you're talking about hologram distribution, is security an issue? I'm not too sure either. So I think where the industry is going to have to evolve, and I think it goes back to your point, is that we need to think about differentiated usage and differentiated business model, because 5G is not just one application. It's going to be a multiplication of usage, and along with it, different type of models. Models whereby the user is the customer, model whereby the user is the product. And I think you're going to have those two models, and we're going to have to work in partnership among ourselves, because it goes back to how do you fix security and issues, and it needs to be collaborative. There's no other way around it. And in terms of making money out of it, it's going to have to be even more collaborative than what we do currently, which is already a change model compared to what we were doing 10 years ago.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. So, and touched to a collaboration between organizations today. I mean, maybe this to you, Andrew. Do you see, because we've seen, for example, in the US, there is a push of like building even the network for the 5G from the government itself because of the cyber threats. So do you see these collaborations between telcos and organizations happening more and more to build these bits of the network and on that, or it's just still business case and then people are still talking about collaboration and there is nothing in the ground in the reality?
Well, I think the collaboration is definitely a reality. I mean, already I think among network service providers, you see a lot more people that are working closely together to optimize networks and to on a global basis, right? How do you interconnect with people, especially with SDN technology and everything else? Now with IoT specifically, I think remembering that it's ultimately an architecture stack, right? So you have ingress and egress, which is a network, but all of it is going to sit on cloud platform somewhere, and then you have the consumers that are out there. But also, I think network architecture for some of the providers will need to change. We are seeing this ourselves with IoT and with 5G. There's going to be a drive towards what a lot of people are saying, edge architecture. So today, a lot of interconnection can be centralized in larger data centers where a lot of the traffic exchange and interconnection can happen in locations like Equinix today. In the future with 5G and everything else, there's a push towards more localization of that traffic at the edge. So we're already in conversations with partners and network service providers about what happens then. Does the traffic exchange happen at cell tower level? Does it happen at a micro or macro edge level? So certainly we're seeing some of those evolutions in the architecture even for mobile and fixed networks.
Just a quick comment. I mean, your previous question about who's going to pay for this, who's going to win, is I think the answer is super clear, right? It's the end users that always win, right? It's kind of like the rule in Vegas, right? The house always wins. And in this business, we cater to the end users. And as the end users, the consumers or the enterprises keep winning it, down the supply chain, we have to find a way how, who pays for this and how we make money, right? I think if we continue with starting at the towers, right? Individual companies having their own towers, not collaborating or sharing tower sharing or infrastructure sharing or whatever may be, we're going to continue to lose on this, and whoever loses less will be deemed as the winner, right? And it's going to be a bit of a pathetic situation that the least loser will be the winner of the all, but at the end of the day, end users will continue to win. So I think from a purely commercial perspective, put the technology aside, we have to figure this equation out, right? And there's a huge list of providers until you get to the end user, and who's going to bear the majority of the investment and the return. Maybe to a certain extent, the device manufacturers will be winners on this, because everybody will be forced to upgrade their devices, right? And they have established a nice routine now. Every Mobile World Congress, you keep seeing these device manufacturers pushing their devices and making quite a bit of a killing on this. We're still really in a bit of an infancy stage where we start pushing the technologies or the necessary requirements from our end. And if we draw back to the security topic, it's one advantage that we have today that we could start offering on top of our networks or on top of our assets that would bring us some additional revenues, additional income, additional margin in this game. And it's time for us to recognize this. I see some of these questions, right? Who's the responsible entity for security, for instance? Maybe this may be the time to address this, right? Is it the provider, cloud provider, bandwidth provider, or the customer, right? I think it's a combination. It's similar to all of us, right? When we leave our homes and come to Grand Hyatt Hotel in Dubai, who's responsible for our security, right? Is it the airline we took? Is it the hotel? Is it the government? Is it us? By not doing stupid things and then doing the right things? It's a combination of all, right? We depend on each segment in a different way. So that's where the collaboration, I think, should come into play, where instead of offering all these unique solutions, maybe proprietary solutions, we get together as an industry, define some sort of standards, and really start pushing a certain level of collaboration into the market.
From your side, Mehmet, on the telco side, so you have anything to add on that? No?
Actually, so I would like to give the total number of the smartphones out of the mobile phones. It's about, as of the end of last year, it's about 4 billion smartphones are being using in all over the world. So according to the forecast, it's going to be probably more than 6 billion. So according to me, the end users, the mobile users, or the customers are not aware of the big trends. So we have to save them, and we have to make them in the safe side. However, it's not only concern. I mean, the security is not only concern for the operators, as Cengiz says. So we have to make collaboration. We have to make partnership among the industry on the telecommunication industry and the ICT industry level, according to me. So in Turkey, we have vertical functions in the parent company, which is Turk Telekom. So they are dealing with the cyber attacks and cybersecurity, as well as the government. So government has the high level committee in order to find a solution to make cooperate among the players in Turkey, as well as outside of the Turkey, of course. This is related to the whole industry, not only for operators, not only for the vendors.
Talking about the involvement, I want to ask you a question. And talking about the involvement of the government, what do you think is required from the governments to make this a success? Where they should be involved?
According to me, government should define the regulations about that. That's all I think. But of course, they have to encourage the players in order to make sure they are providing secure connectivity, secure services.
Are the governments a security threat, or are they pushing for more security? I think that's a question we need to answer, right? And I know it's getting into some maybe dangerous territory, but something to keep in mind.
I just wanted to add that one, that's who is responsible. If you see, unfortunately, the bad guys are organized, right? They don't have their data center, they don't have their network, they are not a telco. But at the same time, they're launching a DDoS attack, which is last year, it was 1 terabyte of DDoS attack they have launched. Now, what we have to learn from them, that 2-3 things, for security, everybody is responsible. That means it is layered, right? I cannot hold responsible only the government. Government can keep the regulation. Government can ask us to, you have to do this, but it starts from the education. That means the end devices, if you see you are using a smartphone with a 5G connectivity, and with that one, if you start sending some legitimate traffic to a destination, it is good enough to launch an attack to somebody else, right? That means how many of us actually maintain the security is that you are having smartphones. How many of us have implemented a basic security controls in the smartphone? Right? That means any anti-malware, some malicious activities are not happening. If we start implementing this on the end level, that means I am helping the society not to get affected by me what I am doing. This is one. Second one is telcos they are the best placed to protect the whole infrastructure, because everything is in the internet, it is passing through us. At the same time, we have a challenge. Telco cannot intervene everything which is going. Data privacy comes into the picture, right? That means we have to ask different layers in this chain. That means starting from the end user, he should be responsible. How to do that? Whether you are having a right protection for your child, what he is doing, what she is doing. At the same time, what you are also subscribing, when you are using your mobile banking or your net banking, whether you are seeing that whether it is locked or not, I am going to the right side or not. If I am not doing that, I cannot hold responsible to somebody else. This is both ways, right? That's why if you talk about security strategy for an enterprise, for an organization, for a society, it has to be inclusive. It has to be from lower level to top. Otherwise, it is going to fail. Why? Unfortunately, the bad guys who is impacting our society, they're organized.
Just one sentence I would like to add. So actually, even my kids, the people thinks that the private informations and the financial informations or the other informations, personal informations, are being hacked by the hackers. Actually, when you are connected to the internet, all informations are leaking onto the internet to the world, of course. So that's why the people has to be aware of this kind of security issues.
I think it's the same. I think I'm not sure you want to place a legal responsibility on an operator. I think we have had enough regulation on our industry, and in many ways we've been more regulated than more vital industries. But it is definitely for us a question of values. Is where do we want to be seen as operators? And definitely we have a role in terms of educating our customer and protecting our customer. And there's also an opportunity, if we're among people in the street, to make money from effectively from that protection. So this is a matter of education and protecting our customer, but this is also a real business. We know it exists, and it is something we need to provide to our customers. So I think the figure we have at the moment is we estimate roughly that the companies will spend, I think in the next 2 years, the figures will be $100 billion in cybersecurity spend, so at the level of big corporation. And we have a role certainly to educate customers. So on our side in Orange, for example, we have a large activity called cyber defense, which is providing effectively cyber protection in terms of cyber analysis and cyber protection. We've made acquisition in terms of competencies in that field of expertise. We recently acquired a company in the UK called Secure Data, and one of their main assets is effectively ethical hacking. And effectively what you do when you have ethical hacking is you educate your customer, you show them what can happen to them in a friendly manner. And this is effectively a big responsibility and a big opportunity for operators to be in that space. So there's I think, in terms of the value we represent in the industry, there's a value of protecting our customer, caring for our customer. There's an aspect of education, and there's also an aspect of business. It is a real business, and it is a complex business to implement.
Thank you for that. So, Sarkar, if we talk about if you talk about security, if you had to put like the 5 threats that today, from the security point of view, especially with the involvement of the IoT and all of that, what will be your top priorities, or what will be advices that you can give to telcos or the people in the industry about that? So.
From telco point of view, which is very important for us to, with the help of IoT and the 5Gs in place, I see potential threats in terms of getting DDoS attacks. If you see kind of attacks or bandwidth, the cost expensive bandwidth we have, and if we are having, now we have got billions of bots across the globe. And this, with the help of 5G and the smartphone penetration in the market, then they will have more bots available, and they can use those bots to pump in traffic to a specific IP address. And then when it goes to, let's say, your downstream customer, IP is getting impacted for a DDoS attack, it is passing through your network. And in our network, when it is passing through my network, and all this bad malicious traffic is actually consuming the bandwidth what we have. That means what I see the biggest challenge, industry has already observed 1 terabytes of attack, and the analysts, they are saying probably down the line 1 year time, and it depends on the geopolitical situations as well, when the attack will launch and what kind of attack will be launched in which country. But we can see that 2 to 3 terabytes attacks happening. Now, if you talk about that, let's say if you are getting a 1 terabyte of attack in a country, some of the countries' whole backbone is 1 terabyte. right? That means whole country's infrastructure is down. That means they will not be able to do any business in terms of financial institutions or if it is happening, the government critical infrastructure. That's why some of the governments, they are actually asking, that's the reason, because the US has also asked before using 5G, you have to take permission that what you are doing, what are the security controls you have. Government will not ask you, don't do these things, but they will ask you, the technology will be adopted by people. But at the same time, we have to think that how we can make that access secure. That's why I mentioned it has to be layered. This is one point I see. Another point, biggest challenge would be the fraud. Now, whenever you see technology hack is not very easy, right? If you have got how the hacks are happening. If you see, most of the time, your credentials will get compromised. And it is not from the server they're getting it. When it's in transit, even if you have CAPTCHA, you have got two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication. Now, they will craft the attack such a way, the attacker, they will call, we call it the phishing call. That means it will be like that it is coming from a bank, and they will receive the OTP, right? And there is the concept called man in the middle. That means from the end user to the server, the application is there. Things are getting hacked in between. That is the weakest link in the chain. But why? I'm not saying that it is not possible to hack the technology, because technology hack, they need a lot of investment, a lot of technologies to build in. But let's say if they have to do it, they have to get some data out from the big data platform. That hacker has to use big data analytics. The hacker has to use the machine learning algorithms to get this information out. That's why, if you ask me, there are two types of people. One is those who got hacked, and other type of people, those who got hacked but doesn't know that they got hacked. These are two types of people. It is one of the Gartner fellow in 2012, he mentioned that let us be assumed we will be compromised. In a society, the kind of the space we are getting into it will be compromised. Only objective is how much controls we can put in different layers. We have to be very cognizant of the fact that, that in every layer, we have to be, only technology will not help. It is three things: people, process, and technology. Technology will implement. We have to enable people. They should be security aware. Another is we have to follow processes in each layers. That means whenever, let's say if you're IoT, you have got a connectivity to at home, and you have got your television, your refrigerator connected to that. What kind of security mechanism you have in that network? As a telco, we have got responsibility. If we can go, and it will give a revenue to us as well. That means I'm giving a connectivity to the house, and if I can go and implement some technology in between the gateway, that which will serve as a security, and all the devices are connected. This is how we can build a revenue stream as well. That's a couple of things I see as the biggest challenge to be faced by industry.
Can I answer to one of the questions?
Yeah.
Which is the third question. What does it mean if to customers DDoS is not offered to wholesale IP services?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I don't know if somebody asked the question, but we do provide DDoS on our IP services, so come and talk to us. That's a quick answer if you want DDoS.
Yeah, we can go through the questions as well.
Commercials.
Yes, commercial. And then, no,
So do we.
thinking of somebody. No,
Actually,
ours is better.
as an operator and also the member
yours
of
better?
the, no,
Okay, you're providing DDoS too?
yeah,
Yeah.
we are trying to do that in
okay.
fact.
Well, come to us.
Of
Yeah.
course, why not?
Yes.
Tomorrow we can arrange a meeting with you. So actually, as an operator, so we are spending much more efforts in order to make secure our network services.
10 minutes.
But is there anybody who represents the OTT in the audience? But I have no idea what about they are doing in order to, put some security.
One thing for
OTTs,
sure. One thing
OTTs.
for sure, they're going to be the one benefiting from this.
I have no idea. Do you have any idea?
Yeah,
about
maybe Andrew from Equinix can have more insight into that. What is the involvement, in your opinion, about the OTTs in all of this environment now? What is their contribution at the moment?
With regards to security and DDoS, I mean, I think
5G in general. It's not only the.
well, I think the I won't call it contribution, I'll call it impact, I think, twofold, right? I think number one, they come from the side of, I mean, they are the service providers and they are the ones who are providing the applications which ultimately the consumers are consuming today. So on one hand, a lot of the customer data, in terms of from a security perspective, I think their primary focus really is on customer data. I think if you've seen the most recent incidents, the biggest issues really revolve around customer privacy, customer data, and making sure that that is secure and not being used for anything that's not supposed to be used for. I think that's one. I think the second large impact the OTTs will have ultimately on 5G is on the front end of it, and it relates to one of the questions which we can address later regarding Africa. But I think the throughput, I think, some of the OTTs have projects which are reaching out to the next billion or the next 2 billion people who are not necessarily networked today or don't necessarily have easy access, I think, to technology and services. And I think the OTTs are focused on trying to reach that next billion users to be able to, number one, obviously impact their lives, but also at the end of the day to reach out to more people on the planet. So again, with IoT and 5G and everything else, it's a huge amount of data that's going to be coming back and going to have to be processed, I think, for consumers and applications.
Thank you, Andrew. There is a question from the audience. I think it's linked to that, which is related to Africa. So I don't know. I mean, who is involved in Africa? I think maybe Orange. You are involved in a business in Africa. How do you think? It's not advertising, isn't it?
It's a good point. It goes back to your point of throughput. Is at the moment, I think, well, there's two ways of looking at it. I think in some ways in Africa and in many countries, some countries will directly go through, and are already directly going to 4G. So from 2G to 4G, and that's going back. I think it's the point you made, Cengiz, earlier on. How quickly do you get your investment back? I think in Africa, in certain countries, you will make a quicker move to newer technology and save money on not going through the 2G, 3G, 4G solution. There is a point which is effectively the question of throughput, and at the moment, one of the big point on Africa is effectively Africa is getting well connected from the outside. So around Africa, both on the west and east side, you've got a large submarine cable system, coming in and being upgraded. The question remains, how do you connect, inland through Africa? So I'm not allowed to advertise, so I won't talk about the project Orange has of connecting all the Western Africa countries together. But effectively, we've got project connecting countries together inland, which is the big question on Africa. And then talking more broadly, I think new technologies are coming in Africa. You've got a number of satellite projects to connect Africa with different technology, and they'll be able to also provide higher throughputs.
Particularly sub-Saharan.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
And maybe I'll add on a little bit to what Anne is saying. I mean, offer a little bit of perspective from our side. From APAC, I think my opinion is that Africa won't be left behind. I think with newer technologies coming online faster. I mean, in Asia Pac, we saw adoption of 10G technology probably take roughly in the region of 6 to 8 years. But the adoption of 100 gig was roughly in the region, was compressed probably to half of that. And as a result of that, we see more throughput and more services and more connectivity going out to emerging countries in the Asia-Pacific region, like Southeast Asia and Indochina, so Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and even to the South Asian region. So I think newer technologies and technology will accelerate the connectivity to end users, and that will probably include Africa in time to come.
So the question I would ask as well, so especially maybe we stay with you, Andrew, but we're talking about how do you see the impact of all of this on a data center business, especially you are in Equinix, and what is the challenging to respond to that? Is it building fast? Is it resiliency? Is it getting space available to the users? Or?
I think the evolution in the data center business is interesting. I mean, number one, in the past, it was really focused on infrastructure. So you build good quality data centers, make sure it's secure and everything else. Now, most definitely, scale is hugely important. With the amount of data that's being put out there, and with cloud platforms, and the amount of interconnectivity, everything from subsea cable to fixed line, terrestrial, to ultimately mobile, and even to potentially space and satellite networks. So that evolution is coming in, and the amount of data is pushing, I think, data center providers to scale a lot quicker. With 5G, it's also pushing data center providers to look at, I alluded to this earlier, more of the edge. So how do we deal with smaller scale data centers at the edge? Anne spoke about this, at the cell tower level. So yes, okay, you have the cell towers, which are going to be the ingress and egress of traffic, but there are service providers who want to actually localize, small amounts of compute at the edge, maybe because of low latency applications that need to get to the customer. So how do we deal with, and that is, in essence, small, mini, micro data centers, right? So I think questions for the data center industry certainly revolve around the evolution of the architecture, where is the data going to reside, and ultimately how is the architecture going to evolve to cater for that evolution and that change.
Thank you for that. So, I want just to jump on that is, maybe from security point of view, how do you see that actually impacting the resiliency? We're talking about multiple layers, distributed data, distributed architecture, and all of that. How do you see that impacting security, and how difficult it is to grant the resiliency at all of that levels?
Okay. Now, two things here. There's the trade-off, right? You cannot achieve the availability at the security at the same time. It is you have to take a call that what is my business priorities, right? If you are implementing the security layers, obviously there would be some latency. You have to accept that fact. But at the same time, if you don't accept that risk, that if I am not implementing security in that layer, probably 15 milliseconds additional latency I'm adding into it when I'm putting the from destination 1 to destination B, and this is helping me out to a probably larger outage. That we have to take a call. This is all business, and as a country we have to take a call that what is important for us, that there will be impact. But at the same time, if you see there is a challenge when developing security, technologies are getting built, but when new technologies are getting built, people don't thinking that how to integrate security during the building process. Now, most of the time, it is little unfortunate that technology comes in the market, then people will start thinking building security around it. Now, we are also thinking that our industry is also changing, that when you are building that new technology, then with that same life cycle of the building the technology, security should be embedded. Then the latency issue, the resiliency will not get that impacted. But it is not happening today, but still the industry has already started thinking about it. Now people are talking about blockchain. Now when you're talking about blockchain, in the blockchain life cycle process, people have already started thinking that how to embed security within this process, right? Now we are also learning, and this has to go hand in hand, development and all, and the time to even if you talk about that development process of applications, it is so fast today, right? Now, if we don't integrate security during the development process of the application, there will be some holes. If that vulnerability is getting exploited, then it is going to impact your business. That's why it is a different levels we have to take that initiative. When new technologies are coming up, we have to try embed the technologies, the security technologies within that technology development life cycle, and then we have to design the solution in such a way it doesn't impact much on the user experience. Right? That's how we have to deal with it.
Yeah, thank you. So the last point that I would like to cover before we hand it over to the audience for questions is when it comes to the fraud with the telecoms, especially with we're hearing about this electronic SIM and all of that. So what are the top, when we talk about the frauds when it comes to the telecom today, and I will see the financial impact evolving. I mean, we've been hearing about billions of dollars lost by telcos today due to frauds and telcos. So what do you see that are the top threats today, or fraud, when we talk about fraud, and how do you see the financial impact I mean, evolving? Is it reducing? Is it increasing? Is it?
Yeah, this is a good point from the operator's point of view. So we are struggling with the fraud traffic and also fraud originating traffic, as well as the security. So these are the most important points for the operators. Actually, so there are some couple of softwares or applications in order to prevent the fraud traffic, if you detect it. If you don't, so this is very difficult, and also you have to spend much more money throughout the fraud traffic. So it is a part of the security issues, of course, but actually in Turkey, so there is a certain regulations. So if you are doing fraud traffic, or if you are carrying your fraud traffic, you will be penalized. But it's not the encourage some of the fraud companies or some frauders to not to avoid this traffic. Actually, this is the connected to each other, cybersecurity and the fraud. There is no certain line in between them.
You want to add something about that?
Yeah, I'll just add a few words. I think fraud is predominantly present in voice, right? Traditionally that's the sector that's been most affected, and as you mentioned, it's billions of dollars, but as somebody is losing those dollars, somebody else is making some money from fraud, right? So there are people who really take huge benefit of these fraudulent activities. But as the technology moves forward, we keep talking about blockchain, right? It's one of the hottest words or technologies, buzzwords in the industry. I still call it smoke chain at the moment. It still hasn't developed into blockchain yet. But as we move along the path, as things get real time, then fraud is going to die, right? How do we know there is fraud? It's all in the past, right? We go back to the past, we analyze the past, we know that there was fraud, right? It's a little too late. Unless you get to a stage where you identify fraud real time and put a measure to stop it, you're not going to be able to really stop fraud completely. And my biggest hope is that blockchain that will bring, especially in this segment, is that real-time reconciliation, real-time identification of fraud, and real-time stop of fraud. So that's where I have my hopes on the voice side. Any other on the data side, I don't think it's much of an issue at the moment. It's at a different level, the security and fraud issues, but more the computing power and the technologies developed will get to the bottom of this, unless there are still some people who are playing the three monkeys and allowing this to happen.
So we're talking about being reactive. How do you think that, what are the measures that you as executives said that to be taken by telco to be more proactive into this? Is it the solution? What do you think is the solution? Well, we talked about the blockchain, so is it something that...
Actually, so particularly I want to thanks to Jussi Markela and the capacity teams, because they have established a forum. So we are the member of this forum. This forum, call it GLF. So the operators and some of the decision makers are working on the blockchain issues. So how could be the impact of our revenues, and also how could be prevent the frauds? I mean the leaked money. So it's going to be another initiative among the operators, probably participating by the other players into that blockchain. So lastly, so I have read an article about Denmark. So the government has released the rule, or the parliament, to not use the currency in supermarkets after 2020. So it's going to be most probably beyond the credit card or the bank cards. It's going to be the such kind of the cryptocurrencies or the loaded currency into the card. So after 2020, so maybe you are aware of this news in Denmark.
So we're going to just turn it to the audience if there are any questions or to the panel. So we have two questions there, so I don't know if we can pick them up. And
Past our time, probably.
it says remaining. Yeah.
One question I see this was how should a wholesale approach the security issues? Now, I think as I have mentioned earlier that telcos and wholesale are better placed. What I can suggest to you that if you are looking for building new revenue stream, and cybersecurity can be one of the space, and it will help the society at the same time to business, because the new things will come up. There will be gaps into the systems, and some bad guys will try to make it more efficient for them, and there is a fight. Always there will be bad people and good people fight. But what we can do to start with security, see all telcos, and they have got two wings, right? One is the telco business, and you are at the same time you're the enterprise. Your enterprise infrastructure should be protected very well and implement multiple layers of security which is required. And when you are dealing with customers' data, and GDPR is there, now we need to make sure that we need to have right technologies in place, that like DLPs in this place, multi-factor authentication in place, and then when you are collecting money, and then you are maintaining some standards like PCI DSS or ISO 27001, not for the sake of only certification, just to put the right process in place that you are more secure. This is one. Second one is from the business side. I think we are better placed to sell security as a service. If you see that globally, the resources are required for cybersecurity experts are required very less. The requirement is there in the market. Then if we can build that ecosystem as a telco and an organization, we can, with the technology, people and processes, and you can address a better market and open up new revenue stream for us. I think that would be the approach for the wholesale for dealing with security issues.
Thank you, Zenka. So, with no questions from the audience, I would like to thank the panelists. So, an applause for the panelists for their time and their patience. And thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for participating in this fantastic discussion.